Right, hi everyone, it's Rosanna, editor of South East London blog, and today I'm very excited because I'm in Ed Gray's studio in East London. So this is Ed. Hi
Thanks
Ed.
for coming. Hello, thank you, thanks for coming.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's nice to have you here.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I've just trekked, it wasn't that far from South London over to the East End.
It's half a mile away over there, but yeah, it feels like longer.
Yeah, so we're in Acme Studios.
Yeah, this is in Bow, kind of Stepney, just near Mile End, and I've been here in this studio probably since about 2008, I think.
Right.
Well, I had a smaller one upstairs, and then about 12 years ago I moved down here, or 10 years ago I moved down here. So.
Yeah. And how long have you been in the East End for? Is this where you're from?
No, I was born in Putney actually, so
okay.
southwest, Roehampton, and I've been, I guess, when I came back from art college, I lived in Brixton for a while, and then Walworth, and then I had a studio in Bermondsey, a studio on the Old Kent Road. I kept getting knocked down and made into flats, and then we moved to Rotherhithe, where we live now, and I guess that's around the time that I found this studio. I think 2000. A few years before that actually, but yeah, moving this way, back towards the river. Really.
Yeah. You went to Wimbledon Art College.
I did, yeah.
So I was doing a little bit of digging. So
yeah.
you've been quite varied. So you've done Wimbledon, then Elephant and Castle, Peckham to Bermuda.
Bermuda, yeah. Well, I was teaching.
So
I was a school teacher for a while. Well, before that, I was in the Elephant in a squad back in '95 when I left art college.
Right.
Because I was at art college in Cardiff, and then I came back to London.
What was that like?
Cardiff was
in Elephant Castle.
It was great actually. I mean, it was a really nice. It was an old school. It's now flats, but yeah, it was an old school, and it was really cheap. It was affordable. You know, I was making big paintings, big oil paintings that I couldn't really afford to do, and I was working lots of different jobs. And you know, in the end, I kind of ran out of money, and I realised I had to get a normal-ish job.
Yeah.
So I worked as a guard at the Natural History Museum for nearly 2 years.
Right.
Which
like
a museum guard, yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I mean, it was the kind of
interesting job.
Well, it was the kind of job. I loved the building. I'd always gone there since I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of was volunteering in a youth club. I was teaching art, so I was veering towards teaching, but I didn't feel like I knew enough about the world to go and become a teacher straight away. You know, so. In the end, I was reading all these books about art history in the museum, you know, like you can in a museum job. It's a great place just to research. So and then I decided to do my PGCE, and I moved to Cornwall, to Exeter University, did my PGCE, and lived in Cornwall for 6 months teaching in schools there, and that was a great experience, and I came back to London, got my job in Peckham, in a school in Peckham teaching art, St Thomas Apostle, and I was there for nearly 4 years. But during that time, I started to exhibit my work more, and I was awarded this residency out in Bermuda, and I was there for, well, it was supposed to be for 3 months, but it was a sabbatical from the school, and I sort of told them it was for 6 months. So and I thought if I make any money, then I'll just go travelling, you know. So and I just met my wife at the time, who was my girlfriend, and she came out, and we bought a ticket to Panama and travelled to Panama and went up to Mexico overland, and there was painting and drawing all the way, and you know, it's the first sort of period of my life where I'd actually not had to think about the money for a studio, and you know, in Bermuda I had this amazing studio and a place to live at the same time. So it was an incredible experience, and I thought if I can keep doing that back in London, then that'd be good. And I came back for another year to the school, and then as my work sold well, you know, I decided to make the leap from teaching full time to painting. And with kind of more emphasis on that, and you know, doing workshops for the teaching side of things, because I love teaching.
So you've got an extensive portfolio of work.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see. I mean, when I was looking on your, you know, on the website, and what I like is how you've got London, Mexico, New York, and So when you're in Mexico, is that the work that you've got there, or have you since been back?
I've since been back, yeah. We travelled, that was kind of more of a travelling trip, that first trip, and I was painting sketchbooks and on, bits of card or whatever I could find. And we always said, if we could go back and live there properly, then I could sort of understand the place a bit better. And so we just pitched up back there about 10 years later, no, 8 years later when I had a bit more money, and we found a house in Oaxaca, down in the south of Mexico. Yeah, it's a great place. Yeah.
Oaxaca is
amazing.
Brilliant. As is Mexico City.
Yeah. Well, I was painting Mexico City. We were there for a month.
Yeah.
And I was just drawing in the streets, and then we found. It was amazing. And then we found this. We looked at a few different houses, and then found this incredible house. With a big studio for me to paint in, and a swimming pool, and it was amazing. It was such a good time, and I made 5 really big paintings and sent them back to the gallery, and then we sort of decided to come home for a bit, and then we decided to go again. So that's when we went to New York and lived in New York for a bit, and San Francisco and LA, and and Tokyo as well. Went to Bangkok, so it became.
I saw the piece on Bangkok, the night markets, and also one of my favourite cities, as is Hong Kong, with all the night markets and just the energy. And I think that's really apparent with your work. You really bring people to life, and the city and their surrounding community, and that's interesting. So how do you? It's quite interesting. I was looking at. I'm going to go off on a tangent, but I know one of your inspirations is William Hogarth. Is that correct? So
always.
Digging on him, he's described as a satirist, an editorial cartoonist, a realist. Yeah. And I think it was on Wikipedia, but they talk about his works being modern moral subjects,
absolutely.
Which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah. I think I've been lucky enough to lecture about William Hogarth at the Science Museum, where they've got the amazing election series there in the Rake's Progress.
Which museum?
The Science Museum in Lincoln's Inn Fields. So it's the one with they've got a picture room there with the panels, and the guard opens the panels, and then you can see all these amazing pictures, and it's kind of like his work is like a cross section of society, So he has the kind of corruption at the top, and this is very pertinent to our own time, I think. The corruption at the top, and it kind of filters down to the people at the bottom, and that is very much like a 360-degree view of society that Hogarth had. He knew London so well. I mean, I think he went once to France. And managed to get himself arrested for sketching, and that was the only time that he actually went anywhere else.
Was it not allowed then?
Well, it was during the war, so or just around the time when things weren't very good politically. So, and I think he made a big point of it. He wasn't. Although a lot of his inspiration came from French and Italian painters, he was very much. I guess he was a xenophobe of his time, and like a lot of English, was probably very afraid of invasion. Back at that time. From the French, so it was a political thing. But that side, what I get from Hogarth is the character and the humanity of the people that he painted, and he put everyone onto the stage of his paintings. Regardless of their position in society.
So I think is it the Rake? Is that
the
correct?
Progress,
So you've got and there's different series in that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so he painted these series which gave him an amazing narrative. Throughout the whole series, and tells an incredible story, not just about the rake, but about the society around the rake and what led to the rake being the way he was. So, it's just such rich work. And I first looked at it as a boy. My dad, who was a journalist, he loved Hogarth, and because he was a storyteller, I guess. So there was a great connection there for my dad, and my dad died when I was very young, but he did leave me the book, which I've got somewhere over there.
Oh yeah.
And so I looked at that as a kid, and I didn't really understand, the very old-fashioned costumes. It's engravings of Hogarth.
Oh, okay.
And the clothes are very old-fashioned, obviously, but the style is very graphic. So I got the style because I loved Tintin and cartoons anyway. And, so instantly I understood that. Way of depicting people, but then over time it sort of became, as I learnt more about him, as I studied him, as I talked about him to people, when I have my exhibitions, I show his work alongside mine and sort of the influence that he's had on my life. Then, you know, I just wanted to celebrate really, because he was also someone who was a reformer, so he was trying to reform his society for the better. You know, he set up the Foundling Hospital for unwed mothers with children. You know, just an incredible thing. In order to finance that, he sets up the first public art gallery. He got.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Where was that?
That was within the hospital, so people would come and you know, buy work, and that would fund the hospital.
How brilliant!
As well. Yeah, he's just an amazing. He also did something which I think is even more relevant for our age, in the age of artificial intelligence. He set up the first Copyright Act for artists. So in 1732, a lot of at the time, you'd have an exhibition, and then people would come in and they'd remember what you'd painted. They'd go away and engrave it and have a knockoff version of your picture, which would be very cheap and you know, but mass produced, and your ideas would be sort of synthesized through someone else and not told in a very a very aesthetic way, perhaps with as much impact. So it would lessen your exposure as an artist in a way. And so he set up this law to protect artists.
So you talk about him a lot then.
Oh, I love him, yes, you can tell.
Well, he sounds like very influential.
Yeah, he's amazing.
You know, it's good
he's
to...
amazing, yeah. And just so much humanity in his work, you know. So yeah, I love him.
Well, I've learned about him already today, and actually I'd like to go and see some of his work.
You should definitely go
Where
to...
would you recommend going to?
Go to the picture room in the Science Museum.
Okay.
They don't always open the panels so you can see the rake's progress, I think, because of light conditions and stuff. But I think if you contact them, then they'll let you know about that.
Yeah, I might do actually.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your work, because I mean, we've got these that you can see in the background. These are pieces that Ed's working on at the moment. You know, I mean, how do you approach work?
These are really raw pictures for me, you know, these are works in progress that I'm working on. But the main thing that I do is if you can see some of the sketches behind you there. You grab some of them. So I go out in the street. No, not at all, no.
Who's this?
Oh, that's my dad.
Oh,
yeah.
It's a nice picture.
Yeah, so I go out in the street
drawings here.
and I just turn up with my sketchbook and I just sketch people very quickly that I see in the street, and I'll make hundreds of drawings in a location over could be a few days or it could be a few months, just revisiting the place over and over again.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back and I'll make sort of composition studies, and just lots of little drawings here. Over and over again, kind of trying to find the right angle to draw.
I see.
So these are composition studies for this painting I'm working on of a war memorial in Rotherhithe where I live. So it's a painting about a Remembrance Day ceremony, and a lot of my work is about ceremony and identity, and the identity of places and the identity of people. But it's a combination of very much drawing based activity, going out in the streets, drawing and looking and studying, and then coming back and working out the idea, and the narrative comes over time, like painting over and over again the people onto the canvas, moving them around, and often abandoning the several versions of the canvas. You know, I'll stop and start again. You know, it's a really difficult process. You know, but it's the only way that I know how to make.
So do you start? How do you? So you're saying that you come back to it, and so just back to one of these. There's a lot of movement in this one, especially like just kind of in the round. I mean, that's
circles. That's a really interesting thing, because circles are really really important to my work. And spirals.
Why?
It just seems to be like the way that I can sort of fit a lot of people into the confines of a canvas using those shapes. So often the picture will start with a circle, and I suppose, like metaphorically, the circle is about, it's about kind of unity in a way, and it's kind of a presence but an absence at the same time. So my streets are full of people, obviously, but sometimes streets will be empty at other times, So I'm kind of looking for moments of great energy and the layering of people in the streets. So in my sketches, I'll take little moments that happen over different times and kind of put them back together. Yeah, and I'll try and mimic, when you stand like Shoreditch Station where that is, and you watch people coming and going at different times of day, you're seeing different kinds of people at different times, or you're seeing different kinds of people at the same time, and so my paintings are like, they're kind of constructs from memory and observation from the sketches, but then also a narrative will come through the picture as well over time, and I'll start to understand the place and why I'm painting it. You don't really know a lot of the time why you want to paint something particularly, but then you start to understand what that place is about to you, what it means to you. So that's the process that I'm going through here, is trying to sort of understand what this means to me. And by the end of the painting, you're like, oh, okay, I understand what that's about.
Because it's taking time, isn't it?
It's
you're saying
huge
you're just
starting.
If you're going, and how do you pick where you're going to go also? Do you just kind of put a pin in the map?
No,
a big map over there?
I have thought about that. But when you're out and about in a city, you'll be out at different times of day. You might see an incident that happens that I think, that would be a really good subject for a painting in some way. It might fit into a painting somewhere, and then I'll go back and see what else is in that place at different times. There might be it might just be a building that I really like, and I'm intrigued by, like a name of a building. I painted a big painting of the Old Kent Road, because I used to have a studio there. I've done a few of the Old Kent Road actually, but
we've done is there a night bus?
The night bus, yeah.
Oh God,
yeah.
And really, I have to say, you have to check out Ed's work, because there's so many pieces on there that resonated with me, like the Brockwell Lido, Brixton's, obviously being from the south.
Yeah.
The night bus.
Yeah.
I think it was a jazz cafe. There was something else,
Scots,
And there's just so much stuff.
But like with the Old Kent Road, I'd known the Thomas à Becket pub for maybe 20 years when I was in that area working.
Yeah.
And then it had changed hands. It's now a Vietnamese restaurant, but it still, at the time, it still had the Thomas à Becket sign up there. Yeah. And then I started to think about the Old Kent Road being the old Pilgrim's Way, and Thomas à Becket and how he fitted into that story of pilgrimages. And for me, the city it's a place of pilgrimage. It's a place that people come for work. It's a place that people come for entertainment. It's a place that brought my parents together. They came to London for work. My wife came to England from Sweden to work to London. So it's this. I began to connect up with that idea of the pilgrimage with this kind of ancient sort of idea of Thomas à Becket, and so this whole narrative came about from that. But it really just happened because I liked the pub and the view behind it, and the old Victorian sort of bit of London that was still left around there. So there's many different reasons why somewhere seems right to paint. I think the problem is what not to paint, because there's so much. And it also changes throughout my life as I get older, and I have kids now, and I see the world through their eyes. So I see the city through their eyes, and they give me ideas about what might be interesting. Not directly, but just being out and about with them. I'll go to different places at different times. So it's frustrating because it's an impossible thing to do.
Yeah, you've given yourself a big task, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's also my response to London, So sometimes people see the work and they're like, oh, you haven't got this right, or this is not right, but this is my city.
But it's through your eyes, isn't it? I mean, you're not there, you're not taking a photo.
No.
You're not a photojournalist or whatever. No. You're not sending it to the newspapers.
No. But I really like the fact that they take ownership of the paintings too, and they're like, well, that building, it's got more windows in it than that, or they might say, I know that character, I know that person, and that's really lovely.
That's nice.
When people and what's happened in the last 14 years is I've started to do public exhibitions where I do a series of talks. So I tell the stories behind each painting, and then people come and they'll say, oh, you know, yeah, this happened to me there, or you know, and so I get this kind of dialogue and this sharing sort of exchange, which is really nice, yeah. And all that feeds back into my practice here, so you know, it's special. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Wait, so I like the idea of that. You know, you're showing, but people are talking and they're bringing, and everyone's sharing, and you know, people are pointing out different bits and pieces, and that must feel really rewarding for you.
Absolutely,
you know?
it's so beautiful. I mean, the last exhibition I had at the House of Annetta in Spitalfields, I managed to cram in like 15 tours for people during the course of 2 weeks, and so many people came, and it was I had so many stories in me that I come back in here and it's like, you know, wow, this is such a big thing, you know, doing, you know, but you do really, and I'm getting slower. That's the thing, you know, because they're more complicated and they're more. I guess they're more layered as well, because I'm learning more about the city, you know, so they should be more complicated.
You're always going to be learning. It's such a wonderful place.
Yeah, that's why, you know, it's such a great city to be. I mean, it's a hard place. And it's a hard place to be an artist, and it's a hard place to be a young artist. You know, it's so. I think, you know, if you can manage that and keep going with that, then you know, it's a great thing. It's a great subject.
So what have you got coming up for the rest of the year? Because I'd really like to come to one of your talks. I'm giving you more work to do.
I'm back in the studio really now. I'd like to exhibit next year. I'm trying to find like a public space where I can do the same thing that I did in the House of Annetta. I mean, that was such a special place because it was. It was an old Huguenot house in Spitalfields, and you know, it's a kind of centre for social activism and really inspiring place to be. Yeah, it was great, and it connected up with a lot of the Georgian artists that I look at, like Hogarth, and you know, so somewhere I like to work in places or exhibit in places that are sort of iconic in some way, that will kind of inspire me and bring a crowd to and fit with the work somehow. So I don't know where it'll be, and I haven't got any work at the moment, so you know, it'll be a while yet. You know, not finished work, you know. But my talks are on YouTube. Ed Gray Art TV. Okay. So people can see them there.
There's a few on your website linked as well. Yeah. So I I think like we've covered, you know, some really interesting stuff. I suppose my question to you would be, what advice would you give to other artists? Maybe just because my niece she's going off to Nottingham to do theatre. She'll be painting like backdrops for theatre. So she's going off to do that, you know. I know. I'm actually quite jelly bags because I'm like, you know what you want to do. I'm just going to come out and get some, hopefully, brilliant. Grace, I hope you're watching this, get some really good work experience.
That's great.
But, you know,
I think that's a really good question. I think that you've got to continue with what you're doing. I mean, coming out of art college is a really difficult time. You know, you're sort of out of this cocoon of your friendship network and your tutors, and you're leaving that, and you're trying to maybe afford a studio. You're trying to afford the rent in London. I mean, that's ridiculous now. So I'm just trying to find a flat, you know. I mean, I'm full of admiration for people who are doing that. But I would say, you know, I mean, I used to work in my flat, you know, I was sharing a flat with 5 other people. It was a 2-bed flat. And I just working in my bedroom. It was a bit, but it was a good time, you know. And I did. That's how I sort of started working when I was in the museum. I'd come back at night and I'd just paint, you know, and I'd just paint still lives, and I'd put them in the window, and I'd look out the window and I think actually I'd rather paint what's in the people in the street, you know. So. And
that's where that came from. Do you think that's the kind of beginning?
Definitely.
Have you always painted people?
I've always drawn them. When I was a kid, I was always drawing like album covers and things for bands and imaginary bands, and then I started doing like the Brixton riots and you know, the miners' strike. I was doing like crowds fighting. So it was always a little bit political, But yeah, people were always the thing that I was interested in. But I didn't know how to do it really. I didn't have the confidence to go out in the street and draw. I mean, I'm fine with that now. But years ago, I didn't know how to stand and how to engage with people who were interested or people who might feel threatened by me being there. So, you know, and that's all good now. I'm okay with that. But yeah, I think in terms of advice, I would say, you know, you can work anywhere really, as long as you've got your sketchbook. You know, you don't need a huge amount of space. You might not need a studio. Studio's a great thing to have if you can afford it.
Yeah.
These days it's much easier with social media. I mean, people are really clever with Instagram and everything, you know, much cleverer than I am. So, you know, that's a really good way of connecting to people. And I used to write letters to people to get them to come to my shows, and you know, it was so expensive sending out hundreds of invitations to people. But building a crowd to come to an exhibition is obviously really important. Any way you can engage with people. And these days you don't necessarily need a gallery to work with, you know. I mean, I was with a gallery for a long time and it was really successful. But those relationships are quite unique, you know, and I think these days people can exhibit in different exhibitions, different group exhibitions, and get a profile from that. So there's lots of potential. I think you just don't want to give up, you know. And you can find other work that you can do around your work. You know, I've always done that, bits and pieces of work, and then the teaching really helped. So you know, I really enjoyed the teaching. So yeah, I mean, but I was talking to my friend Maud Milton, who's an amazing ceramicist, and we were at art college together, and she asked me that question because she was making a little film about the work, and she said being frugal is really important, you know, and I thought about that, and it's such a way of life for me to think that I've got to just reserve a certain amount of money every year to keep going and keep the studio going and materials or whatever, you know, that I'm so frugal, you know, with the way that I live, you know, and always just keeping one step ahead in that sense is really important too, I think. And believing in yourself and having people around you who believe in you is a really important thing, because it is quite a selfish activity in lots of ways, you know, to just shut yourself away and, like, you know, do this thing that you do, you know, it's obsessive, it can be difficult to be around artists, you know, because they're worried about paying bills or whatever and keeping going, you know. So I think having people that understand what you're trying to do is really important.
That's good advice actually. I think because otherwise people just won't get it.
Yeah. And you will start to question, why am I doing this? You know, it's like, but something in you you have to do it. You know, you have to find a way.
So where can people find you if they want to go online or?
There's an archive at edgrayarts.com, so people can see that, and the Instagram edgrayarts, Twitter, the same thing, Facebook, all of that. Edgrayarts. So yeah, there's lots of work to see.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for inviting me into your. Well, I can't invite myself, but anyway, thank you for letting me come in today. I've really enjoyed
my pleasure.
chatting to you, and hope to come and see you next year.
Next year. I'll get the word out when the time's right. So, you know, when I've finished everything.
No pressure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you.